By watching this video, you have now become infected with the signal. The signal of having fun times! Cause Jessie is a dork! Hello interwebs and welcome to Jessie Recommends, a series that I do on this channel each and every Monday where I share a piece of work or art that meant something to me and often is a piece of work that might have gotten forgotten or missed by a lot of people over the course of time. And today this definitely fits that bill because I'm talking about a long forgotten show called Threshold. I adore this series so much for a myriad of reasons, not the least of which that one, it is an amazingly cool Eldritch horror series, and it also stars the one, the only Brent Spiner, who played Data on Star Trek The Next Generations, and Peter Dinklage, the Peter Dinklage. Tyrion Lannister himself, playing a very Tyrion Lannister-esque character, actually, in the show, to be very honest with you. But let's get into it. What even is Threshold, if you haven't heard of it? Well, Threshold is one of those shows that aired during the early aughts and late aughts that was like trying to recapture that Lost feel. Like, we all remember Lost being this big show that was sort of like took the world by storm, and every single TV channel wanted to have their own version of Lost. I mean, we had shows like Surface, Flash Forward, which, by the way, I didn't hate Flash Forward, Terra Nova. Does everyone remember Terra Nova? Oh my gosh, they spent a lot of money on that one. You had The Event, you had Invasion, you had Nathan Fillion's Drive, which was a thing for some reason. Like, there were a lot of these shows that were just like wannabe Lost, and really no TV show was able to recapture that until Game of Thrones came along and sort of like was doing its own thing. But for my mind, the show that really actually did best in trying to kind of capture that sort of like mystery idea of Lost was a show that aired on CBS of all channels called Threshold. And the reason I say like it was surprising that it aired on CBS is because at the time, and even still to this day, though a little less so, but especially back during the early 2000s, CBS kind of had this thing as like this was your grandmother's channel, like your grandma and grandpa watched it. So like doing a show like Threshold, which is like trying to capture the youths, it just never really garnered that audience that it really was trying to aim for, because CBS really didn't have that type of audience, which is really sad because I really think Threshold was a really great show. And honestly, for me at a young age, it was the first time I had ever really encountered Eldritch horror, the sort of like horror that is beyond our comprehension. And I think that that is what makes this series so cool. The main plot of Threshold is based around this idea that a strange alien device appears over the middle of the ocean next to an ocean liner. And it was this crazy, weird, like hard to define, like snowflake looking alien artifact that killed almost every single person on that ship except for a few people that survived. And each one of these people that survived was infected with the signal. They started having visions and memories of an alien world that was not their own. But even stranger, and what was even cooler about this series, is that some of that probe got recorded on a cell phone, and people who saw the footage of that cell phone video of just an echo of this probe also got infected with this sort of signal. Yeah, a much fainter version, but also got infected with this signal. So it's sort of like this thing that sort of echoed out even in just images of it, kind of reminding me of that sort of thing from Doctor Who, like an image of an angel is an angel. An image of this probe was still like sort of sending out this alien signal. And so it sort of had this like creeping horror vibe of like this probe sort of sending out the signal into these people. And the people who get infected with the probe are all trying to reverberate out and infect more people with this signal. And so the series all revolves around this team called the Threshold team that was sort of set up to deal with alien invaders and alien threats against the world. They sort of were brought together to be able to deal with this threat. And a lot of the people on the team were sort of pulled from different areas of the world. And a lot of the people that were on this team were not actually told that they were going to be on this team. They were sort of pulled into it out of their daily lives because they were just sort of like, yeah, this person is a really cool expert. This person is a really cool expert. We're going to grab them out of their daily lives and force them to work on this thing because we need these people to deal with this threat. You had Carla Gugino, and hopefully I'm saying her name right, I'm probably missaying it, but she plays Dr. Molly, who is this like sort of badass woman taking charge of the team. She knows what to do. She has all this confidence, yet she's one of the people that gets infected with the signal. So she starts having dreams of this alien world, this sort of crystalline world with aliens hiding in the dark. And she starts to realize that the reason that this probe is being sent down is because maybe they want to terraform the Earth. And again, I love that sort of creeping horror aspect of it. But also, like I mentioned, you have Brent Spiner playing the mad scientist character on the show. He's sort of like the crazy doctor, very much channeling channeling the Dr. Soon energy that he had over on Next Generation, but really kind of fully like bringing it to the fore. He kind of reminds me a lot of like Dr. Phlox, but it's slightly more like manic and menacing version of Dr. Phlox on this show. He is so much fun in every single scene that he does. But like I also said, you also have Peter Dinklage, who is playing that cynical asshole tech nerd, very much channeling what he would later be doing for Tyrion Lannister.
I don't remember reading, and on the 8th day, the Lord created Klingons.
It's funny. No, that's very funny.
Who is sort of like that cynical jerk. He's not as clever or as funny as Tyrion Lannister ended up being. He's not as sort of like, he doesn't have that same level of charm, but he does have that same level of cynicism here that I think was a lot of fun and kind of bounced off the other characters really well. And I think Peter Dinklage just plays that sort of like cynical type of character really well, but I'm glad that he got to marry it later on with the charm of Tyrion Lannister that he can also turn on. You also have some other really cool cast members. I mean, you have the the sort of sergeant military guy who's sort of like I'm gonna do the military thing, but he was played a little bit more nuancedly than I think most military guys were. He wasn't like always like let's blow things up type of character. I think there was a lot of fun with him as well. You also had some surprisingly fun guest stars on the show too. You had Viola Davis guest starred on the show. Cameron Monaghan was in this. James Frann, who many people may know as Sarek over on Star Trek Discovery, guest starred on this series. Speaking of actors though, one of the guys on the ship was played by Ethan Rom, the guy who played Ethan Rom over on Lost. So we got any Ethan Rom stans here? Come on. I know all of you out there are Ethan Rom stans. Come on. The Romy stans be out there. I don't know why. That actor always has like stuck in my mind. It's like, oh, it's Ethan Rom. I don't know why that he is particularly struck in my head as like typecast as like weirdly specific character from Lost, but there you go. So a lot of really fun guest stars in this show's only 13 episode run, which is one of the sad things about the show, by the way, is that it only ran for 13 episodes. I would have really loved if we had gotten more episodes of the show because the mystery and the intrigue built up around the show was so cool. Almost every episode kind of had this, like I said, this Eldritch horror vibe of, these guys from the ship were sort of going out into the world and trying to find new ways to spread the signal. And it got kind of creepy. There was one episode where like one of the guys was like putting his blood into vegetables and like feeding it to people. And the vegetables would sort of send out the signal to other people. That was like sort of like very creepy body horror and like gruesomeness to it. Like the vegetables had teeth in them at one point, and it was like very first encounter with all of that. And for CBS to do that on like a primetime show was just very, very cool, and sort of like a cool way for a young Jessie to like really find this love of this genre that I had never experienced before. This sort of like horror that was just beyond our understanding and reconciliation, and to marry that with science fiction, which Eldritch horror usually has more supernatural roots to it. And I liked that because this was sort of an alien threat, it was the first time I'd ever also seen like Eldritch horror mixed with science fiction in a very, very cool and unique way that I had never seen done before, and never really ever seen done super well since then. There was some also really cool plots that touched upon like religion and science as well. The aforementioned episode that I mentioned with James Frann, he plays a priest who may or may not have been infected with the signal, and they're not entirely sure. And so obviously he is a man of faith. He's being a priest, and he sort of like kind of has this conflicting stuff of like science kind of bringing into it, because aliens obviously are like a science fiction aspect of it. So he sort of like starts like talking about science and talking about Einstein and the ideas of sort of science marrying with faith. But obviously also with the Eldritch horror vibe going on here, Eldritch horror goes beyond definition and goes beyond belief in many ways. And so sort of like this sort of like dark creeping horror of faith coming into the science aspect of his own ideas as well. So it's this kind of interesting overlap and discussion of ideas of science and faith and where they come together and where they overlap and where the horror part of that aspect is too, of where science meets faith and where the horror comes in. Some really cool concepts in all of that. And like I said, I think probably my biggest sadness with the show is that it only lasts 13 episodes. While I'm giving it my highly, highly, highly recommend to all of you out there, and every episode I believe is available on YouTube, though the quality isn't great. There's also DVDs of this series as well, and I think it's well worth your time, if only for Brent Spiner alone, who's just tons of fun. I will say the sad part of it is that it ends on a cliffhanger. There is no resolution to this show, which ultimately kind of puts a damper on it overall, but I still think it's well worth a watch, especially at 13 episodes. It's 13 episodes of truly excellent Eldritch horror. It's a lot of fun. You get to have some time with some really great actors, and the only disappointment is the series doesn't really get a chance to wrap out fully in a way that is satisfactory, which ultimately is disappointing, but was sort of emblematic of a lot of those like Lost-esque shows. So that is Threshold. That's the series that I wanted to share with all of you, but did you watch Threshold when it came out, or have you discovered it since? I'd love to hear all your comments in the comments below. Yeah, that's what I meant. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more recommendations like this and also discussions of geek topics, social topics, political issues through geek topics. All that stuff's right here. Also, you can support me over on my Patreon, where you can get yourself cool perks like your name and videos and also access to a Discord server where we discuss our recommendations and things like that. But beyond all of that, I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Because Jessie is a dork. I held this for a really, I was like waiting for the next thing that I wanted to say, but I just held that for a really long time. I don't know if I'm going to put this in the video, but that was an awkward amount of time that I just like stood there staring at the camera for editing purposes. I'm, I'm weird. Oh God. Patrons, it is time to assemble! Catherine Lambeth, Miranda Janelle, Ashley Allen, Bokikio, Eli Bergmoss, Ashlyn Solstice, John Cool, Greg Gillum, Stephen Kleinard, Chamomile T, Randy Thompson, Wellington Marcus, Boyd Earl, and Marybeth Earl, Stephen Schuhart, Wayne Twitchell, Auntie Kate, 808, Rick Osborne, Dominic Noble, Ish the Mad, Buttoneer, John Steele, Meadow Whisperer, Gavin Robinson, Michael Beam, Munir Amlani, BBD, Jason Knott, Hannah F, Andrew K, Bree Beecher, Jasmine, Sky Skinner, Maeve, Skylar Gray, Flynn Nathan Steele, Tiffany Danger, Sean Piper, Geek Filter, Jane Packard, Wen Dizzle Bizzle. Why do I do this to myself? Sarah Bystem, James Karate, Jacob Tovar, W. Randy, Edie, Mari Neckar, Bush, Celestial Dawn, Din, Mark the Edge, Pissed and Twisted Garage, Lily, Polly Mina, Laura Demo, Liza, Nikki Gordon, Bloomfield, Andrew, Lamaro, Zone 1 Librarian, Jenny Mabel, Michael Hardy, and finally Corey Honkanen and Vale. Done. All right, not my best patron rap, but I figured it would still be fun for you to see all my failure on screen, immortalized in every video this month. Also, I know I mixed Captain America and Superwoman. Deal with it. But thank you, honestly, to all my patrons. I really appreciate all of you, and you really mean a lot to me. I would not be able to do this without you. Thank you so much for supporting me being an absolute dork and weirdo. I wish you all the best.